a soldier at war. I know you've seen my face before. I am red, white, and blue. I am black and brown and yellow too. I have killed and I have died, all alone and damaged deep inside. And the child I used to be was sacrificed for some insanity. Left a boy, now half a man. My innocence was lost in a foreign land. Fought so hard and I fought so long. I fought for my country, right or wrong. In the eye of the slaughter, no star-spangled banner did I see. There is blood on the water, it's flowing like the blood inside of me. In smoke-filled rooms, the men of might will send your son somewhere to fight. And I am one of many more, just pawns in a holy war. There's a murder of crows. Now the war is dead and gone, but the battle goes on. And the dream that used to be is buried so deep inside of me. I believed what I was told, but all that glitters is not gold. I still see my brother's hand. Why he died, I'll never understand. I'm a soldier at war. I know you've seen my face before. Just a name and loaded gun. One more lost, forsaken son. I'm a soldier at war. I'm a soldier at war. I'm a soldier at war.
Hello, this is Dan Shea with Veterans for Peace Forum. Welcome back this year in the new 2011. We're going to begin the program. I first want to just remind people that there's still a war going on. You know, we still have, it's a war and occupation that's going on. A lot of stuff is being told about, you know, our economic crisis, the recent violence that was going on in Arizona. But too often we forget about the soldiers that are still fighting. Just for my producer, I'm getting some other noise here on the thing, some music or something's going on. Some kind of conversation's going on. So what I wanted to remind people is that as of today, there's been at least 4,436 members of the U.S. military that have died since the start of the Iraq War. At least 1,360 have died as a result of the Afghan War and related operations, according to the Associated Press. There are many people that have been wounded and brought home and have died afterwards. There's reports of 18 suicides a day from our Iraq. Still getting feedback there, folks. There you go. Now it's off. The other is that in a recent report I saw that there were women suicide rates were even higher than the male soldiers that were coming back. These are things to be concerned about. But I want just people to remember that we have some over 350,000 post-traumatic stress cases and equal number of post-traumatic brain injury. I say that every time, but I think we need to revisit that over and over and over again so that people understand that when you're talking about these numbers of those that have passed away, or no, I shouldn't say passed away, but actually were killed in combat, that there are so many people suffering from this war, and it's affecting us in our local communities. Today's guest is Wray Harris, an Iraq veteran. Ray's story of transformation from soldier to activist with IVAW is something we wanted to talk about. We also just wanted to say something about him. He joined the U.S. Army 3 months out of high school in October 2005. He was stationed at Fort Bliss, Texas with the 2nd Battalion, 12th Cavalry Regiment, 4th Brigade Combat Team, 1st Cavalry Division. He was deployed to Iraq on November 1, 2006, and for one of the first units to deploy under General Petraeus, troop surge, and he fought in, what is that, Ghazalia?
Ghazalia.
Ghazalia, Baghdad.
To ever pronounce that right on the first
Thank
time.
you.
Good job.
Throughout 2007, and returned to the United States in late December that same year. He was honorably discharged in the summer of 2008 after being diagnosed with post-traumatic stress. And after spending over 2 years plagued by essential crisis, he has only recently begun what did you say?
Existential crisis.
Existential crisis. Now you can explain that.
I won't.
He was only recently begun to come full circle with who he is and what he's done and how to use those experiences to make effective change in the world. He was recently named the president of Oregon's IVA chapter of Iraq Veterans Against the War, and will soon begin classes in Eastern Oregon.
Yes.
Well, let's talk about a couple of things here.
Sure.
Tell me where you grew up.
I grew up in Staten, Oregon for 11 years. I had an abusive stepfather, and so we led to a lot of bouncing around. Idaho, a little bit of time in Nevada. Spontaneous, really, but Staten was the only consistent. I ended up graduating out of Central Oregon Madras High School.
So you kind of grew up in the rural areas of the country?
Sure, unincorporated communities, small places, yeah.
And what was the thing? I remember when we were talking before that you had said that you had sort of a conservative background growing up in those areas, and just probably your family background, etc.
My political philosophy in high school was, I am so far right, I am never wrong. And
then so what made it your decision to join the military in the first place?
I knew that that's what I was going to do from the time I was very young. It was in my blood. My grandfather was a Korean War veteran. He lost his leg, and he died a horrible, broken man, and somehow I just knew that was just still what I was going to do. So I wait till my high school summer's over, my senior year summer, and I start seeing my friends going off to college. And I don't want to stay in this small little town, I want to go, And so one night I got really drunk, and I called a girl that meant a lot to me. And she told me that she was getting ready to go to college, and I was like, well, all right, I guess it's time for me to do something. So I called the recruiter 2 in the morning, and he shows up at my house the next day, and it was like, all right, I guess I am going. I mean, it's time.
So you joined the military, and what was your boot camp experience like?
Basic training is a very unique experience. A lot of head games.
Yeah.
A lot of head games. A lot of physical exhaustion. You know, a lot of mental exhaustion.
Of PT and
a lot of physical training, yeah. And the indoctrination begins in basic training.
Okay.
I never walked around with my friends. We would sing songs from the radio.
Uh-huh.
We wouldn't sing songs about shooting people in the face. You know, we wouldn't sing songs about, well, infantry things, you know, warfare things. And they're not, these aren't sung with the jovial marching attitude. Well, they are,
Yeah.
but there's a purpose behind it. And I soon found what that purpose was.
So you wouldn't sing, or you would sing?
Oh, we would sing.
You would sing?
We would sing. Cadence is what the term is, you know.
Yeah.
And
You would sing songs like, do you remember any?
Airborne Ranger. And the whole time that's getting sang, the platoon or the drill sergeant says that, and the whole time the platoon says, shoot, 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 shoot to kill. Shoot, 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 shoot to kill. Various cadences like this.
Mm-hmm.
Running cadences are different.
Mm-hmm.
For example, you know, double time march. I went to the market where all the Hajis play, pulled out my machine gun, and I began to spray. You know, things like that.
Yeah.
Necessary things to accomplish the goal they want.
So that, I mean, that speaks volumes about
Sure.
the indoctrination
Sure.
and the dehumanization of the Iraqi people. And,
Absolutely.
you know.
It's a necessary function to instill in people if you
Right.
want them to do the things that you're
Now, you and I think both have read On Killing. Have you read that?
No, I'm much more familiar with Colonel Grossman, Dave Grossman,
Yeah.
through his lecture
Oh,
on
through it.
YouTube,
Okay.
Bulletproofing the Mind,
Right.
if anybody wants to type that in.
Yeah, it's a very important thing. Lieutenant Grossman actually wrote a book called On Killing. And one of the things he talks about is from the Roman Empire to today is how difficult it is to get a soldier to shoot another human being. And with that, the military has studied this and has to learn how to encourage people to shoot on order. And so one of the things, I mean, when I was in the Marines, of course, is you know, we didn't fire on anybody without first getting permission. But
Sure.
that permission is dependent upon who's telling you. So usually if you were in a situation and you saw people, you use your own, you know, your own knowledge and understanding about what the conditions are.
Sure.
But here you can't do that. You call it in, you then get permission, you fire. Well, if it's a village and somebody says
Sure.
it's a free fire zone, you
It's a
fire
free
in
fire zone.
That's right. So, I mean, and then he talked about the idea in modern warfare is that you had to create distance between the
Yes.
soldier and the person. And we have weapons now that can fire from distances and from planes and from and drones.
It's a video game.
It's a video game.
Killing human beings has become a video game in the way in the development of recent technology that's being used.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of people are being killed as a result of these video games, these video game devices.
Now, did they use video games when you were in boot camp at all? I'm curious.
Okay, so one day we walked down to a range in Fort Benning, Georgia, an indoor range, where we're being trained to basic rifle. I've grown up with guns my whole life. I love guns. I was very good at shooting. So I was like, okay, an indoor range, this should be interesting. We walk into this room, and there's lanes, probably 15 lanes.
Right.
You're looking at a big white screen 30 feet in front of you.
Wow.
And then they project an image, just a really basic image of a nice green field with trees, kind of like a duck hunt image, really.
Right.
With a nice green field and some trees and targets, the human silhouette targets that Edward Bernays suggested that the U.S. military begin using in an effort to create a more effective machine. And it was a video game. I remember I was sitting there and with a fake, gun that shoots a laser, and I couldn't, it was a disconnect. It was just I played video games all my life. Much more realistic shooting video games than this thing. What does that say about video games? What does that say about the power of a video game? I think it speaks volumes.
Okay, let's go. So then you end up, your MOS was a machine gunner, right?
No, it was that was a particular position I filled throughout the deployment. I was a machine gunner, M249. I was a rifleman, and then for the last couple of months of the deployment, I was a Bradley driver or a Humvee driver.
Okay.
So
now I was also a machine gunner, so
Sure.
I know what that's like.
It's heavy.
Heavy. I carried an M60.
It's heavy.
So you're deployed to Iraq, and you said that one of the first units to be deployed during Petraeus's troop surge.
Yes.
And so tell me, you were when we were talking when we went up to Coffee Strong.
Sure.
And you were talking. I was asking you then, what was that transition? What was it from soldier that had to go in and do the job to something that changed from that so far right that you were?
I was never wrong. When all of a sudden I realized that maybe that wasn't a very sound philosophy.
Yeah. So what was that experience? What was that?
It was, I believe, towards the end of summer 2007, around August. Very, very, very tumultuous time in Iraq. Very hostile time in Iraq. And IEDs were the primary opponent that we were facing. It was the primary weapon of choice for the enemy. So often we would raid houses under the pretense of them being an IED cell. This is an IED, this house makes IEDs, exactly. So one night we're told, hey, here's an IED cell, we're going to go hit it. We suit up like we've done hundreds of times before, same thing. We know the drill. We pull up onto this house in this area we've been through 100 times, and it was a hidden house, but it was very inconspicuous, the fact that it was a house. But we found a little way in, and very, very tight-knit quarters in this house. It was really, really strange. So that was something that definitely stuck out. This was really kind of a hidden house. And a typical procedure, you gather the people inside and you separate them from the rest of the house so they can't grab anything or blow anything up or all these little things that you have a legitimate fear of because you've seen them, And so I'm tasked with pulling security over the people in the house, who happen to be 2 elderly women and a younger mentally disabled handicapped man. I have a machine gun. We're ripping the house apart. They're crying. He's not particularly coherent with the situation, and they're trying to motion to me, that he's not. They're doing this. They're trying to let me know, and I can clearly tell,
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to do anything. I wasn't going to hurt them or anything. But when you're doing these things, you have to put on a front that is so aggressive,
Right.
that is so determined, because that's the only way that you can get it through. It's the only way that you can make these, that you can conduct warfare. And we didn't find anything in the house. Lo and behold, nobody was really surprised. 99.999% of any house searches turn up absolutely nothing. And so, here we are, we're upset, nothing, da-da-da-da. We get back to our little place outside, living in an outpost in Baghdad. And then 2 weeks later, or as best I remember, about 2 weeks later, some very short time frame later, hey, there's a house. It's an IED making cell. We need to go clear it out. Okay, cool, let's do it. Da-da-da-da. We pull up to the same house. we go into the house that's now fixed up from what we had done last time.
Mm-hmm.
The women and the dude are still there. And same thing went down. I was again tasked to pull security. It was just deja vu. It was a really disturbing deja vu, but it wasn't deja vu. It was a repetition of the exact same thing.
And what did that mean to you?
That is terrorism. People want to ask, what is the definition of terrorism? It is a very open-ended word. Terrorism is going into people's houses with guns, seeing their terrified faces, and following through with the orders you're given in the name of a greater good that you really do have the best intentions for. And that's the thing, all these things, it starts with the best intentions. We start with a very pure heart to go do, bad things.
Or at least you were told.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, oh yeah, that's what we were told. That's what everybody was told. And very, very shortly you find yourself in the middle of missions that are less than noble.
Mm-hmm. So when you, after that then,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was sort of your change of consciousness in a sense. But you're still in the military, you're still dealing with this. Is that the beginning of what you would call
the awakening?
Awakening, but also a crisis in you as a soldier and heading towards post-traumatic stress?
I think we were headed for PTSD from the second we got there.
Is that right?
Oh yeah,
okay.
Yeah. We were all headed for PTSD the second we got there. I'm sorry, could you rephrase the question? I'm not quite sure.
I'm thinking mainly, is because you were discharged with post-traumatic stress.
Yes.
And a lot of times most people don't even know they have post-traumatic stress until they leave the service. But I know when I was in Vietnam, there were things that were happening that I would be in shock. I would think of it as shock, or I wouldn't know why I was felt the way I did. And it took years before I really even understood that, about that people were suffering from different things. And I was in denial for many, many years. But it seems like you recognized something, or somebody recognized it in you. Was there a resistance? Were you in the beginning to resist what was going on at that time?
After that incident, I started to step back and kind of just watch more and observe more of these blatant incongruencies that I had been willfully ignoring this entire time until that moment when it was like, okay, something's backwards. Something in this environment is backwards. And, coming back, throughout the entire time in deployment, I didn't go see a doctor. I broke my ankle several times. Actually, I did go see a doctor when I had a staph infection on my face that developed.
You gotta keep it pretty, right?
Oh yeah, you gotta look good. You gotta look good. You gotta look good. And I'm sorry, I just totally lost my train of thought. I just totally lost my train of thought.
Well, that's kind of post-traumatic stress.
That's unusual for soldiers who are thinking about stuff to just go blank.
Well, again, we're talking about how...
Oh yeah. So I came back, and I didn't go to the doctor the whole time because the bond between soldiers is not something that you can understate.
Right.
You cannot pull us away from each other. It doesn't matter how bad the environment is. It doesn't matter how many bombs are going off. It doesn't matter how many bullets are flying. You cannot pull us away from each other. So when we got back, I felt that I had no longer any obligation, because we're all getting separated anyways. Everybody's going different units and things like that. I felt that I had no longer any obligation to do my part, and I knew that I wasn't going to suck it up one more day for that place. Not for that place. I'll do it. I'll do it. I am not a pacifist.
Right.
I am not opposed to defensive violence, but wars of aggression are not my cup of tea.
Well, I'm trying to relate as a Vietnam veteran back and forth between what I felt, what you feel today, because I think you know, there's a bond between, like you said, between soldiers. I think even through generations, all of a sudden, you know, we can talk one-on-one to each other.
Yes.
Sometimes it's very difficult to talk to civilians. And that's for any of you veterans out there. If you're having trouble talking about these things, you know, make contact with other veterans that are, you know, either working through the VA or through the Vet Center or some organization that's trying to reach out. Contact Veterans for Peace, and we'd be glad to talk to you. You know, there's no judgment here. We all been through it, and we have referrals in various places. Contact IVAW, Iraqi Veterans Against the War, Oregon chapter here, and you know, we will try and put you in touch with any referral you need. But sometimes you just need to go out and sit down, have a cup of coffee or beer, and just talk to the people that you know. And
let me say something real quick, you know, to the other vets out there who are, you know, who are out there and they're struggling, they're having their hard times. Some of the kindest, and I've only discovered this over the past 2 or 3 months, some of the most understanding people are honestly in the war protesting movement. And I know that that's a real duality. I know that that's impossible to understand as a you know, as a fighter, because
what have you been told about?
What have you been told about the protesters? Exactly. They hate you. They'll spit on you. You know, they'll attack you and they'll tar and feather you, and you know, who knows? They'll blame you and
baby killer.
They'll judge you and they'll hold you accountable, and you know, doesn't work.
Rambo would say, I came back home and they spit on me
at the airport.
Call me baby killer.
And aside from that, I actually thought that Rambo was a fairly genuine depiction of a dude just feeling it, you know.
Yeah, and I remember when I came back, you know, in fact, none of those things happened. And, and again, it was people in the peace movement that were
reaching
the most
out
understanding.
To you.
Yeah. And they never said anything. I imagine there's always exceptions to the rule. I found actually it was when I started becoming a voice against war that actually it was the right wing. Sort of, or I should, pro-war, pro-troop kind of mentality that would be the ones that would spit on you or call you names and call you a traitor, this kind of thing.
The very same people who will buy me a beer in a bar because I fought will chastise me and reject me because I oppose whatever, you know, because I grew a heart. It's strange. It's really strange.
Well, that idea of loyalty to your men is one in which Marines, of course, have a strong history of that. And one of the things that I learned there was that when I got to Vietnam, the guys would tell me, they says, Dan, just, you know, forget about this patriotism, ma, pa, and apple pie and all of that stuff. What you really want to know is, he says, is that if somebody shoots at us, we shoot back because we're protecting the guys right beside us.
That's it.
And so, you know, I knew right away. I was just with the right people that were sitting there saying to me, you know, we don't need to be thinking about we're fighting some political battle out here. What we're really trying to do is save our lives. And they told me directly. The people on the other side are doing the same thing.
And
they're defending their country, you know.
And you know, one of the things that led to the awakening was we would sit and we would have discussions in guard towers during the extensive moments of boredom, when it wasn't the sheer moments of terror, you know, when you're sitting there and you're talking with your friends. We would talk and we would say, you know, yeah, well, if we came here, if somebody came to our neighborhood like we're coming here, we would do the same thing. So even then we were sympathizing with this. And I think that in an environment, you know, that's natural. There's a point when what they put in basic training and what they put in, you know, through the video games and things like that, there's a point when reality kicks in and when an understanding kicks in. And
so how many guys were in your unit?
You know, like platoon, battalion? Yeah. Oh, good. Platoon? We were at probably about 70% combat capacity. We were, we were missing a squad. No, we had about, numerically I can't quite remember, we had 2 mounted sections, Alpha and Bravo section, and we had 2 fighting squads. We should have had 3 fighting squads and, you know, a third mounted section, but You got to keep on with the mission.
Yeah,
You got to
yeah,
keep going.
you were in a number of firefights then.
One or two, yeah.
Yeah. So, in your area that you were in, the Gazalia.
Yes.
Now, did you went to other places in the country, or was that the main area?
No, we didn't. We deployed to FOB Liberty, and very shortly after we deployed, we began enacting Petraeus's Surge, which was to take your fighting units, as best I understood, put them outside the wire all the time, constant presence, constant patrols, just really, really make a big show, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I was one of the guys that they put out in an outpost under. And before I get into this, the amount of money that's being wasted in this war.
Right.
When I look at what we had to go through and how much easier and how much everything could have been better if all this money that has been disappeared had gone to us, you know.
Or you thought, I mean, the idea that the trillions of dollars that we've spent already, you could make every Iraqi a millionaire. You know, I mean, these are just the insanity of this whole thing. Sometimes drives me mad. But,
absolutely.
Yeah, but so then you're out on the outpost. I know that when as a machine gunner, oftentimes machine gunners are out on the outpost. You only have a couple of them, and they're sent out. So I would be sent out on a listening post.
Sure.
And in the middle of the night, I think. The most frightened I was, even though we weren't being attacked, was the deadly silence and not able really to even speak because a whisper could be heard miles away.
Sure.
And just the idea that somebody, it would be so dark in Vietnam that I could barely see my hand in front of me. And to think if you just slept for a minute, you could have your throat slit in just a second. You know?
Now we have night vision.
Yeah, now
Now we can see in the dark.
Well, we did have that once in a while, but only a few guys had it.
Sure.
But it's a scary thing being out there by yourself.
Yes, it is. Far away from home.
Yeah.
Very far away from home. Far away from anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's say you're out there on those posts, and what happens while you're out there? How long you're out there the whole time then?
Yeah, we were out in an outpost for the better part of 11 months, if not 12,
Wow.
of a 14-month deployment. 14, close to 15.
It's almost so you're a baited target.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. You know, exactly. And, you know, coming back onto the FOB for showers once every 3 weeks, things like that. You know, food, we were given the finest Monsanto cuisine. The finest contracted, you know, genetically modified foods to keep us going, you know. And we made it work.
And how hot was it? I mean, we often forget. I mean, you're out there in desert conditions. And
I know that there's places that are hotter than Baghdad. Yeah. There are definitely places like Kuwait. I've heard reports of 150. But this isn't a urinating contest. 136 degrees is hot. And especially when you're in the back of a tin can Bradley or, you know, inside of a metal box aluminum Humvee. Where
and those outfits you guys are wearing are just huge. I mean, you've got all this gear on you.
Yeah, it's not fine silk.
Yeah.
You know, it's not fine silk.
I've heard guys say with the camel hump for the water on the back, it gets so hot that they can't even drink the water.
Yeah, we did our best to put ice in it, but that's only good so long.
Yeah.
So, but it would get hot, but you would drink it.
Yeah.
You drink it. You try. You know. The strategy seemed to be, let's be friends. Let's act like friends to the Sunnis, while we assist the Iraqi army in slaughtering them. That seemed to be the strategy. Because there was and for example, right down the street from this outpost where we lived, right? Right down the street, there was a mosque, a little mosque called the Mahajiriya Mosque in Gazalia. It was a Sunni mosque. And every day for the first, who knows, several weeks, every day, this mosque would take contact, you know, sometimes 5 times a day. We could hear RPGs, and you could see the tracers just right down the road. we would be suited up, completely ready to go, engines on, everything. We're just ready, you know. But they would never let us go. They would wait until the gunfire died down. We get sent up the street. I'm telling you, it's a stone's throw away. It's a stone's throw away. You can see the mosque from our guard position. And we would get there, and they would have, you know, a lot of dead parishioners. I don't know if that's the Islamic term for a mosque attendee. And then there's the Iraqi army standing there with all their guns turned, and they're telling us, you know, they did this, they did this. I'm an E2 with a saw. What am I gonna do? You know what I mean? You got to tell someone else, man. I got other things on my mind here.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was it's Orwellian.
Yeah.
The war is meant to be continuous.
Yeah. And so you finally come out. What happened that you finally went to the doctors and they started having
one day
diagnosis?
Sure. One day it's the first field exercise, right? We're back out in the line, and we're getting ready to train up because we're told we're going to deploy in 10 months. All right, gotta get on it, you know, gotta get on it. And so we're at the range, and I had just gotten sleeping medication. I was one of the first guys to be like, hey, I can't really sleep, you know what I mean? Can I go talk to someone about this? And thankfully I had a team leader who was completely sympathetic and wouldn't let me take flack from anybody. And that's an important thing. But we're at a training range, and it's a qualification range. We're just zeroing rifles. So we've been shooting all day, and I'm on guard. I'm on the first guard. Everybody else is going to sleep. And I'm on the first shift of guard, and I'm standing there by the ammo depot, you know, I'm smoking a cigarette, thinking about whatever I was thinking about. And two shots. Two very sharp, I heard it. Nobody else did, you know. So I went running around saying, hey, you know, we got a live range out here. This place is going hot, you know. And the next day I get taken to the hospital, and under the care of, again, a very sympathetic doctor, Lieutenant Colonel Dale Lewandowski at William Beaumont Army Medical Center. That guy's a champ. Yeah. That guy's a champ.
So were you put in sort of hospital care at that time, or?
Yeah, I was in an inpatient facility for probably a week and a half. And the funny thing is, I'm in this inpatient facility, right? And of course then you're feeling the stigma, because now you're in a gown and you're behind bulletproof glass and you're feeling the stigma. But I'm looking around, and almost every other dude on that floor was in those outposts. They were in those outposts. And I'm like, well, all right, well, this ain't so bad. You know what I mean? At least I got friends around me here, you know what I'm saying?
I'm not alone, yeah. So
yeah.
How many people were in there? Did you
oh, goodness gracious.
That tells you.
I'm not sure if this was the only inpatient psychology ward for William Beaumont Army Medical Center, but at this particular ward called 11 West, maybe 12 or 15.
Okay.
Now,
is that in Baghdad, or is that in?
Oh, this was at El Paso, right outside of Fort Bliss.
When you came back here.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the funny thing is there's 12 of them there from the outposts, which the vast majority of them probably could have been in there. Probably could have used a little time in there, you know, just to think about stuff. Imagine who's not in here.
Yeah.
Imagine the guys who aren't saying anything, because there's a real browbeating. It's just part of the, well, you know, for the infantry culture, that's just really, you don't go see a doctor unless you see bone. You know what I mean? You don't go to the doctor unless...
Suck it up,
exactly.
Right? Yeah,
man up,
man.
And the incredible thing is that physically, the human body, the human being can endure through an ungodly amount of physical stress and torture. But mental, it's different. Mental's a lot more complicated, you know. Physically, you know, it's easy.
Well, then, you know, for me too, when I sort of came back, one of the things that came to me was that, yeah, I went over. I did what I had to do. I wasn't there very long, which I was fortunate. I ended up spending the majority of my time in the Philippines. But there were things that started thinking, what were we doing there in the first place?
Sure. Sure.
And as I began studying and reading more and more over the years, I started seeing, well, like those guys said, we're not here for apple pie, we're trying to survive. Yeah. But there was a whole movement out there that was protesting the war. And I saw it happen in front of me, the protests, but I didn't get involved. I just didn't want to have anything to do with the war. I didn't want to have anything to do with the bureaucracy of the VA and the military. So I couldn't deal with it. But I started seeing something that was a pattern, which seemed to be to me, I was being lied to. I was being betrayed. And I felt the betrayal had such a heavy effect upon me. I mean, it made me depressed. Of course, there were triggers because we have been since Vietnam in continuous wars.
Absolutely.
And each time we went into, let's say, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Guatemala, then Panama, then Grenada, and then in the Balkans, and then Iraq and Afghanistan, or Afghanistan first and
Sure.
Iraq. Each of these deployments, I began thinking to myself, Jesus, what are they going here again? They're telling the same stories they told me in Vietnam, and I just thought about all those people that we're gonna die.
Sure.
All those families that were gonna suffer. And as I told you when we came in here, is that I just read a piece about this woman who father was in World War II. And he had she talked about, he never spoke about the war. If we talk about people from the World War II, and a lot of guys from Vietnam too, they just never talked about it. And it had a major effect upon their children and their families. Oftentimes people would, be self-medicating, alcohol and drugs and divorce and domestic violence. All of these things become a part of this sort of hidden, invisible wound. And then she said something that when her father passed away, and her father was a doctor, and he did a lot of good things for people, but she said that he was one of the first people that went into the concentration camps. Mm-hmm. And he began actually as a doctor helping the patients there, and he saw so much. She actually found out by going through his locker, and she saw all these pictures.
Okay.
She saw skeletons and bodies and stuff, and then an uncle told her more. Sure. And then she looked up people in his company, and she started interviewing them. They started telling what he had done, but he had broke down, had a mental breakdown, and they had to take him out.
Sure.
And all these years he couldn't talk about that, And it had such an effect upon her that she was going through therapy, but she's writing a book to tell this story and to let people know. And then I remember being a part of a play, which was this play that came to town, which was about a Latino family in which, the grandfather served in World War II, his great-grandfather had, the next one had served in Korea, his father had served in Vietnam, both his mom and dad had served in Vietnam, and he was in Iraq.
Right.
And each time throughout this, they had each gone into the service, but none had ever told what happened. They didn't speak about war. And it was the first time this young man was starting to talk about the war. And then they started opening up. They didn't want him to go back because he was going to be redeployed.
Sure.
And they're saying, we don't want you to go back. But again, that sense of loyalty.
Oh, yeah.
He ends up going back. And how many guys know they don't want to go back, they don't want to do it, but their unit's going, and they're going to, that loyalty, that thing about being with those guys, they don't want those guys to get hurt, and they don't want to leave them alone.
No.
And that's a heavy burden on people. But there's got to be a point when people say, look, I got to do what's right.
Yes.
And
that's how I looked at it.
Yeah.
I came back from my deployment, and I said, well, that's all for me, folks. I'm not good I can't do this again.
Well, and then just as we're talking about these things, it's reaching out to these young kids.
Oh, man.
You just went to Grant High School on this with a panel of people talking with these couple classes.
Yeah. Sure did.
How'd that go, by the way? That was just this.
That was yesterday. That was yesterday morning. Yeah. I think I had their attention. I think we all had their attention. It was more of a. I suppose the purpose of it was to kind of inform kids about what recruiters might not be telling them. Mm-hmm. I personally took more of the angle of what Call of Duty is not telling you.
Explain that.
There's a lot of things on Call of Duty that are very incongruent with the reality of warfare. I call it militainment. There's a reason for things like Call of Duty. It's an entertaining, money-making way to profit from simulated combat, so to speak. Mm-hmm. You can't smell human blood on Call of Duty. Mm. When your friends die on Call of Duty, they come back.
This is a game?
This is a video game. This is a video game that is very popular.
That they use for recruiting?
Oh, no. But it was developed with the advisory of U.S. Special Operations. Okay. I don't know what that means. I don't know to what extent they advised.
Okay.
But there's a lot of, and you know, Colonel Grossman talks a lot about that, about the video games and things like that. He got a lot of airtime during Columbine because people were up in arms about video games like Doom, which he actually said, according to him, and I believe him, he's a pretty well-researched guy, the U.S. Marine Corps was training with Doom. So, but there's a big, I just told him, you know, don't trust those video games. Mm-hmm. You don't see the woman crying over her dead child and her stoic, in-shock husband trying to console her. You don't get TBI from the explosives going off all on your screen. Mm-hmm. You don't hear the snap of a bullet versus, you know. And I think they were listening. I think that they were listening.
Did you have a question and answer afterwards?
Yeah, I know when I was in high school we would have guests, and it was, you know, it's intimidating, but... What
kind of questions did you get?
One bright young man asked how we felt about the U.S. selling weapons to people like, well, people that were supposed to be fighting. And, you know,
it's a good question.
It's a really good question. Hey, you're on it, guy, you know, you're on it. To which I just responded, that's the war machine. Mm-hmm. It's meant to be continuous. Mario Savio, are you familiar?
Oh, yes.
Mario Savio. There is a time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart, that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. That's right. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all. Beautiful.
It's powerful.
Beautiful. Come on now.
Yeah.
So telling.
Yes. Mario, I actually met Mario.
Oh, you did not?
Yeah.
I'm jealous.
I went down to San Francisco for, actually it was a political campaign for equal rights for women, and it was one of the last ones. And Mario was out there with a group and another professor I knew from San Jose, from Davis, I believe. Mm-hmm. He was a Black Studies professor, and he says, "Dan, come on over. I'd like to introduce you to Mario." You know, so I got a picture of Mario, one of the last ones before he passed away.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah, no, it was just, for me, just to meet him was a great pleasure. But and then I started looking up his history, and what an incredible man, and what he suffered after that by the Reagan administration. And I would call it whitelisting him from the colleges, and he had a difficult time. He had a heart problem, and divorce, and everything that happened to him afterwards. But he started teaching. Finally, got back and started teaching in high schools and mathematics and other things. And he was considered one of the great teachers in the high schools.
I didn't realize
and
that.
It was something. But that speech is so powerful. I read it. Yeah, I've got it. I keep it around the house somewhere all the time, and it's one thing that I look up every now and then. It's online, folks. You can look it up. Just look up Mario Savio, and the free speech movement. And there were a number of other people that I knew that actually lived in Portland that were part of that movement. Stu Albert, who was another person who was teaching down. He's taught down in Berkeley. When they started having that, all the protesters started teaching free classes outside. You know, they were graduate students. I mean, there's a lot of ways in which people can get involved and do things, and let people know. So, you know, we had this. I mean, we had IVAW Oregon here for quite a while, but we've got people that come and go. We get a group going here in Portland, and then you know, the next thing you know, they got like a pack on their back. They're a Rolling Stone, and they're moving on from one place to the next. Yeah. The thing is that we just had a meeting right here this last week.
Sure did.
At Red and Black.
Yeah.
And
great place, good food.
And we had a few people from the National come in, and we sat down there, and they were telling us the campaign. So can you tell people a little bit about what kind of campaigns they're running right now?
Right now what we're working on is we're working on Operation Recovery. And Operation Recovery is geared toward recognizing soldiers' right, their human right, to seek quality, adequate health care for things such as, in particular, military sexual trauma, which is a huge thing. It's not talked about.
Right. Huge
issue. Post-traumatic stress disorder and traumatic brain injury. We all had PTSD when we came back. We all had it. We had physical injuries. We had backs that were broken, you know, like, because there's only so much you can do. And there again, these men were forced into another deployment. They were browbeaten, intimidated, things like that, just by the general nature of the military. Because in a just war, you can't quit. You got to keep going. You know, you got to. Well, in all war, really. But
well, one of the things one of the soldiers from IVAW was talking about, I forget his name, the guy with the beard.
Jason Hurd.
Jason Hurd. You know, he talked about recovery in a way I hadn't heard it said before.
Yeah. This is
that?
amazing. This is amazing. Depending on whose statistics you listen to, between 20 and 50% of the military has been diagnosed with military sexual trauma or being involved in, you know, post-traumatic stress disorder or traumatic brain injury. Now, if we force the government to recognize, commanders to recognize, that these soldiers have a right to heal before being forced into another tour, you'd have a pretty hard time keeping up an occupation.
That's right.
You'd have a pretty hard time.
You know, we're trying to stop the war, but if you stop, what? And we're talking about almost probably 90% of the people who are suffering from post-traumatic stress. You stop 90% of the people from being redeployed, where are they getting their soldiers?
Absolutely.
You know? So when people think about it from that angle, I thought, what a brilliant way to approach this. I mean, I've heard of people who've been deployed up to 5 times and have been diagnosed, you know. And what was the young kid just recently that was here in Eugene that was picked up, and I'm trying to remember the name of the guy.
Who is that?
I can't remember the name. I'm really bad here at names.
Situation.
What guy named Joe? What was this? The recent case for IVAW?
Jeff Hanks. Specialist Jeff Hanks. Yeah, he was going to be forced into another deployment. And representatives from IVAW went down to, I think it was Fort Campbell.
Oh,
I believe it was Fort Campbell.
Okay.
And approached commanders of, I want to say 101st Division and Brigade, and presented them with an Article 138.
Which is?
As far as I know, I'm just brand new to these kind of things. I'm still trying to get all the pieces together, but it lets him know that he will be brought up on charges should he force this young man into a deployment.
And he had received so much, so many phone calls, so many emails
so much
that have buried it, that he calls up IVAW and says, what did I do to piss off IVAW? Right?
Well,
and this is, I mean, what it had was showing that it really had a major effect.
absolutely.
So, you know, we only have about 3 minutes here, so I do want to say a couple of things. One is there's another event that's coming up. It's a report back from Cancun climate change, another war that's going on, you know, that's important to us, and people need to find out about that. That's going to be Monday, January 31st at Ask Me. Building is on the screen here. If you want to find out more information, you can contact them. The other is you know that you want to find out more. I mean, contact IVAW.
IVAW.org. IVAW.org. India Victor Alpha Whiskey.org. We're out there, guys.
And also you can contact Veterans for Peace, Chapter 72.org. Or I want to just let you know too that we're going to have a VIP National Convention here, and that IVAW is going to piggyback with us. That'll be in August of 2011, the first week from the 3rd to the 7th of August. Keep that on your calendars, and we'll talk to you more about it from this program the next time. I want to thank Kelly and Jim, Kelly Labonte, my producer, and Jim for handling all the technical things that need to be done for this program. So check back with us for Veterans for Peace Forum, fourth Saturday of every month. And so if you have any questions at all, contact us, read, find out what your rights are, and the main thing, if you want somebody to come to your classroom, if you're a teacher, contact us. We'll send somebody there to talk with you. I think that we'll be rolling out of here soon. We got about 3 minutes. There it is. Thanks again. Come back and see us. And Ray, thanks for coming.
Hey man,
I really
anytime.
appreciate it.
Anytime.
You bet.